Okay, so let's do that again. Is it better now? Okay. So welcome to my session. Today we're going to see how you can configure your Aria automation once you have deployed it out from the box. I hope I don't disappoint the people because this was originally planned as a TypeScript session, but that was not the goal. It was the goal to have a configuration of Aria Automation 8. 8 because I don't have any licenses yet for VCF 9. I just passed my VCF exam yesterday, so normally I should be able to get my licenses right now. But for the moment it's Aria Automation 8, so let's kick it off. So just a short introduction myself. I'm a freelance infrastructure engineer. I've been part of the community since 2018. You can see my Twitter handle over there, and also the one of our Belgian team. So if you ever feel the need to come over the channel and say hello to the land of beer and chocolate, you're always more than welcome to join a session of ours. I'm also part of the vExpert community. I don't know, are there any vExperts in the room? Oh, just a few. Okay, so maybe you need to talk to some of us to see what you can do to get in the community, because it can certainly help you in your personal development and also in your work development. I think the other people will agree with that. So let's kick it off. So what's on the agenda? So first we'll continue with the initial configuration, so see what you need to configure to make sure that you can start using that. Once in that phase you will see that we also need to have a tag strategy, because Aria Automation uses tags to determine the initial placement of your VMs. So you have to think of your tag strategy. Then we will use those tags in a blueprint design, so you'll see how we can then make sure that we force the location of the choice that we made. We also go through the identity manager, just to make sure that you can see how you can set up your RBAC roles. And then I will do a short demo in my home lab to show you all what I explained on how to do that in your environments.
Okay. So the first thing that you need to do, once you deployed your environment, you will see that you need to have your integration for your VRO configured, because initially you will see that there are no integrations created for Aria Automation. So that means if you would go to your orchestrator, he will not find it because you didn't define it yet. So that's something important, that you configure your orchestrator plugin or your integration. Then on the list you will also see you have other integrations. So for example, if you have Ansible or you have Puppet, you have workflows already in your environment that you want to use, you can integrate with those, and you can make sure that you can still use your workflows from Puppet or from Ansible as well in your Aria automation. Also, for example, an IPAM solution. So we use Infoblox as integration. So you can download the plugin for Infoblox. Make sure that you have that integration with your Infoblox environment, and then you can use that for your IP addressing, DNS, and DHCP configuration. So that's the first part, that's the integration. Then secondly, is that you create your cloud accounts. Okay, that's the first step. So you will see, for example, you can connect to the hyperscalers, so AWS, Azure, or Google. But what we will be seeing in the demo is a connection to your vCenter environments. So you'll see on the left here, oh, it doesn't show on the screen. On the left here, you have the vCenter server at the bottom. So that's the first thing. So that's the major piece. And then what the goal is that you will chunk up your cloud accounts in different cloud zones. So initially, so this is an example to make it a bit more visual. So you will see that you have your vCenter. So that's the cloud account that you created. And then the second thing that we're going to do is we're going to create cloud zones. So in a vSphere environment, that means that you will have clusters configured in your cloud zones. Okay? In AWS, for example, that will be a region that will be configured in your cloud zones. Okay, so we have our vCenter, we have our clusters. What's next is network profiles. You need to know which network that you need to choose. So what we will do, we will create network profiles, and then you will need to add the network profiles where you want to deploy your VMs in that network profile. Okay? Then the next step is storage profiles. You want to determine the location of your VM on which data store you want to do that. And so in your storage profiles, you will add data store clusters or your data stores to which you want to deploy. Then you can also create in your Aria automation, you can create projects. So say, for example, you have engineering, you have development, you have finance. You can create different projects for those and make sure that you say, okay, for example, my development, they can only deploy in AWS, for example, and then finance, they need to do it on-prem because that's more specifically for that need. So you need to have on-premise location. For each project, you can also create custom names. So say, for example, say that you want to have a custom name for your development and for your engineering to make sure that you have a distinction in your vCenter. You can create custom names for that. And then the next thing that we need to do is create image mapping. So let's say, for example, you have golden images as templates in your vCenter. You will add these in your image mappings, and then those can be used in your environment. Flavor mappings is t-shirt sizing. So you can say, for example, okay, I want to create small, medium, large. Or you can also say, I don't want any flavor mappings. And then in your deployments, you can determine how many CPUs and how many memory you want to assign to the environment. And then, of course, Identity Manager needs to be configured as well, because you need to set up a connection to your Active Directory to make sure that you can do the RBAC roles based on AD design. So I was talking about tag strategy. So you see, if you create a cloud account, you will see that you have capability tags. Maybe it's a bit small, but it's just to show that you have tags that you need to put on that. You have the same for your cloud zones. You also have capability tags, network profile, and your storage profile. So you have to think about the strategy of your tagging on how you will do that in your environment. I have an example here. So that's what we have in our, it's a simple setup of what we have currently. So you will see we have two data centers, east-west. We have a vCenter in east, a vCenter in west. That was initially because we were using SRM, but because it was too expensive, we removed it. So in the future, we'll remove one of those vCenters as well. You will see we have a local cluster in east, we have a local cluster in west, search cluster who's accessing replicated storage, and then the local clusters use local storage. We have the same environment in development and in production. Okay? So what that does mean, on my cloud accounts, I don't need to put any tags. I don't need to make a distinction, for example, between development and production, because I have my separate environments. For Aria automation, I have a development environment, and for my production, I also have a separate Aria automation environment to use. So I don't need to put any cloud tags on my cloud accounts. On the cloud zones, however, we need to put some tags. So for example, on east, we set a location east as a tag on that. In west, we put the same location tag, but with west. And then for my stretch cluster, I put a location on stretched. Okay? Then the next step is, of course, the storage. So we will also need to add a storage profile on our tags. So we have two environments. So we have silver and gold. So we put a storage tier on that. So the storage or the data store clusters which are silver, we put a tag storage tier silver, and on our gold storage, we put a storage tag with storage tier gold. And then for the local storage, we put an extra type of storage type standard, and then for the replicated one, we put a storage type as replicated. So then those are the tags that you can use if you want to do initial deployment of a VM. So it will go through your cloud accounts. He will have no distinction which tags to use because there are not any set. On your cloud zone, he will see, okay, in my blueprint, what do I have? Do I have east, west, or do I have storage? So there you have your first selection of where you will deploy your environment, and then at the bottom, it will more finely detune on your storage to make sure on which storage that you want to become, on which storage you want to install your environment. On top of that, I also discussed the network profiles. So what we have done on our network profiles, we have put the tag of the VLAN ID as a network tag. So that in your blueprint, we will use that then to make sure that we can use the VLANs to determine on which network you want to assign your environment or your deployment. Now, in my home lab, you will see it's a bit smaller, so that's what you will see later on. So here, it's the same thing. On my vCenter, I didn't put any tags. I have a management cluster and a workload cluster. Cluster is just one ASIC because I don't have a home lab as Mark Huppert. So I put the tag location management on my management cluster, and I put a tag location workload on my workload cluster. And then on my storage, I have a local storage on my ASICs, and I also have a NAS. So I set a storage tier local and storage tier NAS, so that way you can make your distinction between your different storages. And then the same for the network. I've put the VLAN IDs in my network profiles to make sure that that is done. Okay, so then here we have an example for a blueprint design. I hope this is a bit readable. On the top, you will see we have the inputs. So maybe I go to this side. So from line 2, where I can't reach, till here, you have your inputs. So there you will see, for example, I have a size which is linked to your flavor mappings, small, medium, large. Then I have 2 templates in my deployment. I have 2022 and 2025. So those are also a selection that you can use. The VLANs that I use are the ones that I have in my home lab, so 1010, 1020, and 1030. And then for the location, that's for your cloud zones. I have management and workload, so that match my tags. And then the same for storage type. So the storage type that I've put is local and NAS, and then those are used then from the tags that are assigned to those cloud zones. Then we have the resource. So then you have the configuration of your VM itself. So here is just a part of your vSphere machine. And then you see here at your storage, we put a constraint that we have storage type, which is your tag that we have created. And then it links to your input, to your storage type. So here we have the storage type where you have local and NAS. So that means if you select that in your blueprint, you will see that in your environment as well. Then the flavor mapping, so the t-shirt sizes, so small, medium, and large. We put that as a constraint on your flavor. The image is linked to your templates that you have done, so 2022 or 2025. And then your networks, you will see here that at the bottom we also put a constraint that you put your tag as a VLAN, and then you have the number of your VLAN, so 1010, 1020, or 1030. Okay? Then here in your identity manager, what do you do there? You can just select that to an environment. So, for example, your home Active Directory or your Active Directory which you have in your at your work. You make a distinction. You make a creation of that if with your ID. You link it, and then you can use those in your environment as well. So that's a bit, in a nutshell, how we can do that in an environment. And now I'll do a small demo, but I hope it goes better than that one. That's better. Okay, so here you can see once you connect to your environment, you have the different environments. So you have assembler, orchestrator, pipelines, quick start, and your service broker. There's an enhancement in VCF 9. You no longer have to choose, but there's just one page where you have everything mentioned, which is a bit easier, so you don't need to remember where you have put everything. But for the configuration, we go to assembler. Let me put this away. And we go to infrastructure. Now, the infrastructure tab is shared between your service broker and your assembler, so you could use that in the same environments. So you see, for example, I created my my vCenter, a link to my vCenter, so that's easy, right? So it's just add cloud account, you select your vCenter server here, and then you give it a name, you fill in your IP address and your credentials, you validate it, and you're done. In case you don't need to put any tags on it, that's okay. If for your specific environment you need to put tags, you need to do that, of course. Then the second part that I explained was the cloud zones. So you see here, I also have some AWS, but that doesn't matter. So I have my management cluster, and I have my workload cluster. So you can see here already that I've put a location tag on workloads, and you can see here, if I go a bit higher, I have the location management on my environments. So if I would show that. So first you need to select a region, an account. So that's because you need to create your cloud account first. So I can say I choose my VC1. You go to your compute folder, and here you can say, okay, include all unassigned, or you say manually select your compute. Probably because I already have one created in the previous one, he cannot add it the second time in another cloud zone. So cloud zones are specific for that environment. So if I open this one, for example, you will see that the compute, so I have my management cluster configured in my compute in here. Okay? And then the same for the workload on. So now we have cloud accounts, cloud zones. Next step is network profiles. It depends. So for example, if you have 2 vCenters, for example, you will create 2 network profiles because it's linked to a cloud account. So you will have a network profile for each cloud account. Because I only have 1 vCenter, I only have 1 network profile. So if I open that one, and I go to my networks, you will see I have added my networks here. And then I've added a tag with VLAN and the VLAN ID on the network. And it matches the name that I gave here. I didn't put this one here because that was not really necessary. Okay, still following? Okay, so then the next one was the storage profiles. So here the same thing. If you create a storage profile, it's linked to a certain cloud account. I only have one, so I just have one storage profile. And then here you can see that I have my local storage, my local storage configured in that one. And I see that apparently I didn't create a tag on this one yet. Let me see. But I've put it here. So on my data source, I've put a tag here. Sorry. So it's not on your storage profile, but it's on your actual, let's say, disk that you put your tag on. So that's it. We have cloud accounts, we have cloud zones, we have our storage profiles, and we have our network profiles. Next then is the image mappings. So here you can see you create an image mapping. This is linked to, like I said, if you have, for example, a golden template that you have in your vCenter, you can match, or you can link that. For example, you will see that if I open that. You will see it's linked to my template, which is here configured in my vCenter. And then, of course, the same for the other ones. Then flavor mappings. I showed you in the blueprint I had small, medium, large. So for the small one, what I've done, I have 2 CPUs, 4 gigs of memory. That's 1 VM. And then large is an 816, and I think the medium one is 4 and 8 that I've set up. Okay. So that's that. We're almost ready. So the configuration is done to make sure that you can create your first deployment. So what do we do then? Next is we go to design, and you have your template. Okay. So here I have Windows, because you can just create one Windows template and then link to other image mappings. So you don't have to create in Aria Automation 7. You have to create for each version a blueprint, but here in 8, that's no longer necessary. So you can just create one for all. And then this is the print screen I showed you in my presentation before. Maybe, is it readable, or do I need to put a bit bigger? It's readable? Okay. So here you have the small, medium, large. So the flavor mappings that I just showed you. I have the templates which are linked. I have my VLANs which are configured. I have my cloud zones which are configured. Storage profiles. So those are the inputs. and then those then are then put on the tags or in the constraints on your VM that you want to deploy. Okay? So then you publish that, and another thing that you need to do, which I now think about, I didn't put that in my presentation, but I'll explain it now. So you can see here, I can consume it, but that's because I already did some configuration. So if you go to content and policies, you will need to create a content source. That's just easy. It's just like next, finish, and done. But you have to create some policies, definitions. So you can see here, you have to do a content sharing policy because you want to share it to a certain amount of people. So you'll see here, for example, I just link it to project, so to that local project. Then you can say, okay, I want to have that Windows one, the blueprint that you just created. And then you can say, okay, user-based or role-based. Role-based is when you have your integration with your Active Directory. And then you can say, okay, I want to deploy, or only this amount of people or these Active Directory groups can have access to these templates. So you can make sure that there's some RBAC on it, and you only allow the amount of people that you want have access to the blueprints. So let's say, for example, you have one for your development specifically that only they can use for testing. You can deploy that for them only, and if you then say, okay, now this is ready, you can assign it to other people, then you can update your content sharing, or you can say, okay, I create an extra template, and I publish that one, so the other people can access that one. Okay, so then what we do, we have this one, and if we request this, I'll otherwise already create a session to my vCenter as well. So you give it a name, test one, for example. You select, because this is an enum, because we have put that in the blueprint, so you will get this in a drop-down box. If you want to say, for example, you don't want to hard-code it in your blueprint, that's also possible. So then you need to create code in your orchestrator, for example, where you say, okay, I'm going to dynamically fetch my templates, and then you can populate that in a drop-down box. But for that, you need to create a custom form. This is now just the regular form that you can do. This is without customization. It is what it is. I mean, you can't change anything. If you want to say, I want this box to the right, you can't do that. Or you want to have an extra tab, you can't do this here. For that, you need to create a custom form. And then you can create tabs, you can move your boxes anywhere you want, and then you have more possibilities to do that. But here, because this is just a basic deployment, I didn't put any custom forms on that. So I'm going to choose my Windows version. I'm going to say I want a small one. I'm going to put it in 1020, for example. I'm going to put it in my workload, and I want to put it on my local storage, for example. And then you can submit that. Now here, if you go to your deployment, you can already see a bit history of what it's doing. But what you can also do, if you go to infrastructure, you can also go to requests. And then here you can see that your deployment has started. And here you have a more overview of what you want to do, or what's going on, let's say. So here, for example, you already see that the VLAN 1020, that's already selected. He knows on which vCenter he needs to go. He knows that matches a certain port group, so that's good. So that part is done. Machine allocation, he's still busy, because there's no name yet. So you can see here as well already. So the location, workload, usage a hard constraint, so he's put it there. He's checking my projects to see if they are mentioned in that project. Then he sees that I have flavor mappings, and it matches the small one that I chose. Blueprints, you will see it's the 2022. And then you will see here the cloud zone that he's going to use is on your workload cluster. So he's still busy with that, and in the meantime, I hope we already see something in our vCenter as well. Here you see, currently he's cloning the virtual machine. And that will take some time, of course. But I already have another one. Oh, not here. In your deployments. So then once it's finished, you will see it create successful, and then you can check, of course, if he wants. Yeah. You will see the tags, and you can also, for example, what I didn't explain it, of course, because this is already a bit advanced, is you can say, for example, you can put custom properties on your blueprints as well. So let's say, for example, that you have the requirement that you want to do a day 2 operation, for example, but you need to have some information available on your VM. You can put that in custom property. So in that way, let's say, if you want to know where you put your cluster, for example, and you want to know that in advance with your custom property, you can get that information out of it, and you don't need to put that anywhere else. So it's easier to get some information on that level as well. But custom properties is already a bit more advanced. But it allows you to put information on your VM, on your deployment, that you can fetch later on. So let's say, for example, that you have some kind of CMDB, and you have, for example, deployed it as a development server or a test server. Those are things that you can put on your deployment as well. So let's say, for example, you have to do a day 2 operation, and you need to know, okay, if it's a development server, I can do it, but if it's a production one, I can't do it. You can get that custom property out of your VM and do the deployment that, like you can use that information to determine if it can execute a workflow, yes or no. Yeah, so that will take some time. Oh, it's almost there. But you can already have lock, of course, on this machine. So here you can see he did the 1020. So that's because of the tagging that we did. We have deployed it on our workload cluster, and it's on local storage. So I can also show that here. So these are all local storage, and my Synology is, of course, the NAS, which has that tag with the NAS, so that you know on which environment you need to deploy it. So that means that we're good to go. It's powering on. It's on the right location, and you have done your first deployment on your Aria automation. Of course, he still needs to do the check on the vCenter level, so that's why it's still busy, but probably that will take another few minutes. Voila. Let me hide the summary. So then here you can see your network that has been assigned to it. So it's on the 1020, so that's good. There are no custom properties because we didn't configure that. And then on your machine, you can see your IP address, your host on which it's deployed, your storage as well, your network, which is then linked to the network that I just showed you. Oh. Voila. And that's about it. I'm a bit short. I'm a bit early finished. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple. Firstly, you had tags for networks, so you had VLANs on your management cluster and on your workload cluster.
Yes.
Is there an ability to branch your the catalog we were looking at, so that according to the cluster you choose, you then only get the eligible VLANs for those? Because I can see that a user might select the wrong VLAN in the wrong cluster.
Yeah, that's possible, but then you have to write custom code for that. So then you, in your orchestrator, you can then say, okay, I'm going to use, for example, if you say I'm going to cluster 1, for example, you can get that input in a custom form, then you can get that input as a, let's say, input for your other workflow. And then you can say, okay, now get me custom code saying, okay, this is the cluster. Can you get me dynamically all the networks which are assigned to that environment or to that cluster? That's possible, but then you need to create custom coding for that.
Okay. What type of code is that?
That's a JavaScript. That's an orchestrator.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, and the second question was, how does the end user get their IP address and credentials to log into that new VM?
That's also custom coding that you will need to create. So let's say that you deploy the template, and then, for example, probably you will also do some changing of the administrator password. Then you will join it to the domain. So those are all steps that you need to do extra, let's say. But also in your custom coding, you have to make sure that that's done. And then you can say, okay, when your deployment is finished, you can have, I can show you that as well, remind me that. You can say a subscription, for example, that you say, when my deployment is finished, I'm going to execute another workflow that will now send an email to the user, for example, and say, okay, this is IP address, this is your password, you can connect to the VM. So let me show you that in the extensibilities. So in assembler and extensibility, you have event topics. Let me put that in a list here. No subscriptions. So here you can say, for example, a new subscription. You give it a name, or let's say deployment finished. And then here you have event topics. So if you say, for example, deployment, then you have a lot of things. So here, for example, you have deployment completed, deployment requested. So depending on the events, let's say in the life cycle of a VM, when you deploy it, you have several events. And on those events, you can create subscriptions to, for example, say, okay, you can execute certain workflows. So let's say, for example, once you powered on the machine, you want to, for example, change the IP address or give it an IP address or whatever, you can say, okay, once the VM is really actual running, then you can create the workflow to change the IP address, for example, on that VM. So you have a lot of events that you can do. But for you, for example, you can say, okay, once my deployment is completed, then you can say, for example, action workflow. Then you will choose here, okay, the workflow to send an email. Then you will probably get the inputs of your VM with IP address and a password that you've set also in your workflow. And then you can say, okay, now send that to the user. So those are things that you can do as well. Any other questions? Okay, then I'm going to give you 10 minutes back, and thank you for attending my session.